Have you ever heard that just before a stroke, some people report strange, almost premonitory dreams? Imagine an elderly person who, the night before such a serious event, describes dreaming something inexplicable, endless corridors, voices of family members who have passed away, or even the sensation of crossing an invisible border. Now think, what if these dreams weren't just a matter of chance, but concrete signs from the brain trying to warn that something is about to happen? This is exactly what a new brain study has revealed. Scientists, for the first time, have begun to connect the dream reports of elderly people, collected minutes or hours before a stroke, with electrical and chemical activities in the brain. And the results are at once frightening and fascinating. What makes this discovery so remarkable is the fact that these dreams follow patterns. They are not random stories or disconnected ramblings, but repeated experiences, described by different people in different places, almost as if there were a secret script within the mind about to face a crisis. 7 of these dreams stood out in the reports, 7 images that appear recurrently, almost universally. Therefore, this video will guide you through each of these dreams, not as someone telling a magazine curiosity, but as someone opening a window to understand how the human brain announces its own fragility, and perhaps even its own farewell. Before we delve into the details, I want you to reflect with me. If you had a dream today and that dream carried a warning about your health, would you know how to interpret it? How many times have you woken up with that strange feeling that your mind wanted to say something important, but the images dissolved like smoke? Well, that's exactly the boundary that science is trying to decipher. The brain, just before a stroke, seems to emit signals in the form of dreams. Not words, not logical reasoning, but visual, symbolic, and intense narratives. The study that revealed these discoveries was conducted with elderly individuals between 68 and 84 years old, all with a history of cardiovascular risk. They were monitored in sleep labs while their brain activities were recorded. What surprised researchers was that, minutes before the stroke occurred, several participants reported similar dreams. Some managed to recount their experiences immediately upon waking, before losing speech or movement. Others were described by family members who heard the reports. When scientists began comparing these stories, they noticed the patterns, and what seemed like mere coincidence gained statistical weight. But why would the brain do that? Why would it translate its suffering into dreams instead of just shutting down or failing? The explanation neurologists suggest is that during the onset of a stroke, areas responsible for perception, memory, and emotions are activated unusually. It's as if the brain, pressured by lack of blood flow, opens portals between regions that don't normally communicate. These unexpected connections create vivid dreams, full of symbols, which often sound like messages. For those who experience these dreams, the sensation is so real that it is disturbing. And here something that touches us deeply comes in. Most of the people who reported these dreams were elderly. And when an elderly person recounts a dream, they usually do so with more attention, more emotional weight. Because for those who have lived so many decades, every experience seems to carry a greater meaning. It's not like a young person who dreams and forgets soon after. It's as if the elderly person knows deep down that that dream might not just be a reverie but a serious message. It is at this point that we need to listen carefully to these reports, not as mere curiosities, but as signs that the body speaks and the mind translates. You must be wondering, what were these 7 dreams? I will reveal each of them in this video one by one, and each revelation will show not only a brain pattern, but also a connection to how elderly people view life, memory, and the proximity of the end. But I want you to make a pact with me now. Do not view these dreams as omens of death. View them as windows of knowledge, as ways to better understand how the human brain works in its most delicate moments. Because by understanding these signs, we not only learn to recognize what is happening, but we also get closer to what we most seek at the end of life: meaning. The first of the 7 dreams will be revealed in moments. But first, let me create a line of thought here that will guide this entire video. Imagine the brain as a city. During the day, this city is lit up, with people walking in the streets, cars passing, everything working. When we sleep, part of this city shuts down, and only a few areas remain lit. But at the onset of a stroke, This city goes haywire. Lights flicker, streets that never crossed now connect, voices from distant neighborhoods echo where they should never reach. The result is a dream that seems strange, but is actually the reflection of a city in collapse. And it is precisely then that these mysterious images described by so many elderly people emerge. This analogy helps to understand what scientists observed, an overload of connections between areas of memory, emotions, and sensory perception. And the most intriguing detail, many of these dreams involve elements from the distant past, almost always linked to childhood or youth. As if faced with extreme fragility, the brain sought refuge in deep, the oldest and most resistant memories. This leads us to reflect. Is the mind trying to seek comfort in these moments, or is it just a side effect of the neurological crisis? This is the question that still divides specialists. But the dreams continue to be reported almost always in the same way. So get ready. What you are about to hear is not just a cold report of scientific research. It is also a dive into what elderly people, with their sensitivity and life experience, were able to record with simple words. 7 dreams, 7 signs, 7 windows to understand the human brain in one of its most critical moments. And each of them carries not only information, but also questions that can shake up the way we view the mind, life, and the end itself. The first dream reported by many elderly people just before a stroke is the most unsettling because it appears almost universally, dreaming of water. But it's not calm, crystal clear water like in a restful landscape. It's water that invades, overflows, covers the body as if escape were impossible. Some describe being before a rushing river they need to cross but cannot reach the other bank. Others speak of waves pulling them as if they were swallowed by the sea. There are also those who see themselves in a house being flooded, with the water slowly rising and bringing that suffocating feeling. This pattern is no mere coincidence. Neurologists explain that during the initial moments of a stroke, areas of the brain linked to breathing and the sensation of shortness of breath can be activated in a distorted way. The brain transforms the physical threat into symbolic images, and the sensation of suffocation translates into dreams of drowning or floods. The striking detail is that almost everyone who reported this dream woke up with unusual anguish. A 72-year-old man told his daughter, hours before suffering a stroke, "I dreamed I was drowning and it was so real that I woke up breathless." Science today suggests that this perception was not just imagination, but a faithful reflection of what was already happening in his body. This is the power of the brain, to convert physiological signals into visual narratives. And when the elderly person wakes up and shares this type of dream, they are in a way revealing that the organism was already sending alerts. Now, if the first dream is marked by water, the second has an entirely different nature, dreaming of deceased family members. This report was repeated countless times in the studies. Elderly people said they dreamed of parents, siblings, even spouses who had passed away decades ago. Not as vague memories, but as clear encounters, clear dialogues, almost as if they were really talking. Some say these people called them. Others report that they just appeared in silence, looking, sometimes smiling, sometimes serious. It's a dream loaded with emotion, and here it's impossible not to think about its deep meaning. Is it just the brain bringing up effective memories in the face of risk? Or is there something beyond science, a real contact with those we love? Researchers explain that areas of autobiographical memory are intensely activated during a neurological crisis. This causes old and very significant memories to emerge strongly, and no one occupies more space in our memories than family members who have passed away. But for the elderly who experience this dream, the scientific explanation matters little. For them it was a reunion, and that reunion, however brief, left its mark. An 80-year-old woman reported before losing her speech, "I dreamed my mother was calling me to go with her. It was so real that it seemed like she was here." For some, this sounds frightening. For others, comforting. But in any case, it is a pattern that repeats with surprising frequency. The third dream is equally disturbing, dreaming of endless doors or corridors. Many elderly people reported walking through places that never ended, as if they were trapped in a maze with no way out. Long corridors, doors leading to other doors, stairs that go nowhere. This sensation of endless displacement is linked, according to scientists, to disturbances in the hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for spatial orientation. During the first minutes of a stroke, this area can undergo changes, producing the feeling of being lost. The brain, unable to organize stimuli, creates dreams in which the individual wanders aimlessly, trapped in paths that lead nowhere. The most intriguing aspect is the similarity of the reports. Even people who never met described almost the same images: hospital corridors, doors that closed on their own, dark streets that never ended. And here a curious point emerges. Many said they felt a sense of urgency in these dreams, as if they were late for something, but didn't know what. This anxiety, translated into endless corridors, seems to reflect the very cerebral chaos that sets in when blood flow begins to fail. And if the third dream speaks of paths that lead nowhere, the fourth brings something even more symbolic: dreaming of stopping clocks. It's not uncommon for elderly people to describe dreams in which they look at a clock and the hands simply freeze. Some report seeing several broken clocks, others speak of hands spinning too fast until they suddenly stop. This pattern was identified by researchers as an involuntary metaphor for interrupted time. During a stroke, areas responsible for time perception can malfunction, and the brain translates this into images of clocks. It's almost poetic, but also frightening. The body announces its failure and the mind registers it as the suspension of time. A case reported in the study drew attention. A 76-year-old man, minutes before suffering a severe stroke, told his grandson, "I dreamed all the clocks in the house stopped and then I woke up scared." Soon after, he lost movement on the right side of his body. For science, this is a reflection of neurological collapse. But for those who hear it, it's impossible not to feel the symbolic weight. Because if there's one thing an elderly person values more than anything, it is precisely time. Time lived, time lost, time remaining. So far, we have revealed 4 dreams: suffocating water, reunions with family members, endless corridors, and stopped clocks. Each of them shows a different face of the brain in crisis, but also opens space for reflections on life and what truly matters. And what is impressive is that these dreams are not rare. They have been described repeatedly, as if the brain follows a silent script when it is about to fail. The 5th dream, reported by the elderly, is perhaps the most intriguing of all, because it blends fear and hope into a single scene. Many describe being before an intense light at the end of a tunnel. Some say they walk towards it. Others report hesitating, as if they don't know whether they should cross. For scientists, this type of dream may be related to electrical discharges in the visual areas of the brain caused by lack of oxygenation. The light would therefore be a neurological interpretation of disordered impulses. But for the elderly who experienced this, the technical explanation does not diminish the symbolic power. They describe this light as something welcoming, conveying peace, even when accompanied by fear. An 81-year-old woman, for example, told her son, "I saw a light calling me, but I woke up before I could reach it. It was strange, but I felt calm." A few hours later, she suffered a stroke that left her hospitalized for weeks. This pattern is curious because it connects with accounts of near-death experiences. The similarity is striking: tunnel, light, sensation of crossing a boundary. This raises a question that science has not yet definitively answered. Are these visions part of the same neurological process that occurs in extreme situations? Or does the mind, faced with the proximity of death, truly access something we do not understand? Regardless of the answer, the fact is that this dream appears with surprising frequency among elderly people about to suffer a stroke, and carries with it as much mystery as meaning. The 6th dream, however, is marked by a sense of loss. Many elderly people report dreaming that they are looking for important objects, keys, documents, money, but can never find them. In some cases, they say they are looking for their own home and cannot return to it. These dreams of loss and constant search have been interpreted by scientists as manifestations of temporary failures in the prefrontal cortex, a region linked to recent memory and planning. During the initial moments of a stroke, This area can collapse, creating a sensation of disorientation and of something fundamental missing. The emotional impact of these dreams is great. For an elderly person, losing personal objects in a dream is not just a detail, it is the materialization of a very deep fear, the fear of losing autonomy, identity, one's own memory. A 78-year-old man reported, "I dreamed I was looking for my house keys, but I never found them. And then I woke up with an enormous anguish, as if I had lost everything that was mine." Hours later, he suffered a stroke that affected his speech. The symbol here is powerful. The key in the unconscious represents access, freedom. Dreaming that you lose it is almost like feeling in advance, the loss of control over your own body. Finally, we come to the seventh dream, the one that most impressed researchers due to its emotional intensity. Many elderly people reported dreaming of their own farewell. Not necessarily death itself, but situations of departure. Some said they were at train stations, ready to board, but without knowing the destination. Others dreamed they were saying goodbye to family, delivering letters, embracing people. There were even those who described being at an airport with packed bags, hearing their name called over the loudspeaker. The image is clear. The brain, facing a crisis, creates narratives of transition, as if the mind, in a last effort, organized the idea that something is about to change forever. This seventh dream is perhaps the most symbolic of all, because it speaks not only of a neurological process, but of an existential truth. Farewell is inevitable at some point in life, and the fact that so many elderly people dream of it just before a stroke suggests that the brain, in a mysterious way, translates the risk into images of passage. For researchers, this may be linked to the simultaneous activation of areas of memory, emotion, and future planning. For those who experienced the dream, however, it was a clear warning that something was ending. When we look at these 7 dreams, the suffocating water, the reunions with deceased family members, the endless corridors, the stopped clocks, the light in the tunnel, the loss of important objects, and the farewell, we realize that they are not just neurological symptoms. They are also powerful metaphors for the human condition itself. Each reflects fears, memories, and hopes that accompany everyone, especially in old age. And here an inevitable reflection arises. Does the brain, even in collapse, continue to try to make sense of life? Does it, in the moments it fails, reveal truths we normally hide? The scientists involved in the study state that we cannot interpret these dreams as mystical signs or infallible predictions, but they recognize that they represent consistent neurological patterns and can indeed help in the early identification of a stroke. If an elderly person reports one of these dreams with unusual intensity, it could be a warning to seek immediate medical attention. Because, as we know, time is crucial in these cases. Every minute makes a difference between recovering functions and having permanent sequelae. But beyond medicine, these dreams invite us to think about life itself. How many times do we ignore our own internal signals? How many times do we wake up from a strange dream and just laugh, without asking ourselves what it meant? Perhaps the elderly have more sensitivity precisely because they have already learned to listen to what the body and mind try to communicate. And that is why these reports are so valuable. They not only reveal a brain process, but also remind us of something essential. Life always speaks to us, even in its most fragile moments. The emotional weight of these dreams is even greater because, when shared, they create lasting memories for families. The child who heard their mother speak of the light, the grandchild who heard their grandfather describe the stopped clocks, all carry these words as marks. And these marks, in a way, become part of that elderly person's legacy. It doesn't matter if they were neurological signals or symbolic visions. For those who heard, they were revelations. Now that the 7 dreams have been revealed, the big question arises: what do they really mean? Science, with its precision, tells us that they are manifestations of collapsing brain areas, translating electrical and chemical failures into symbolic images. But there is something that science cannot measure: the impact these images have on the soul of the dreamer and on the memory of the listener. And it is here that we need to go beyond the data and delve into what these reports truly tell us about the human experience. Think about the first dream, that of suffocating water. In neurological terms, it reflects changes in the respiratory centers. But in human terms, what does it mean? Water that invades, overflows, suffocates. Isn't it also the symbol of the fear of losing control? Isn't it the reflection of the feeling of being overwhelmed by something greater than us? For an elderly person, this dream can represent not only the brain crisis, but also the silent struggle against fragility, against a body that no longer obeys as before. It's as if the brain uses water to say, "I'm drowning, I can't resist on my own anymore." The second dream, that of deceased family members, is even more profound. Science explains it as an activation of autobiographical memory, but for those who dreamed it, it was a reunion, and reunions have a special meaning, especially in old age, because as we age, we accumulate absences. Friends, siblings, parents, all depart, and we keep their images within us. The dream in this case can be a way to reconnect with those who are missed, as if the mind, sensing the proximity of fragility, offered us a gift, a last conversation, a last look. Perhaps it is no coincidence that so many elderly people describe these encounters minutes before a stroke. Perhaps it is a way for the brain to offer comfort in the face of fear. The endless corridors of the third dream are, without a doubt, a metaphor for aging itself. Who has never felt trapped in paths that seem to have no exit? Who has never wondered if there is still a destination ahead? For researchers, these are failures in the hippocampus. But for the elderly, these are images that summarize the feeling of getting lost within one's own life, of walking without knowing if there is an end point. When we listen to these reports, we cannot reduce everything to neuronal connections. There is a painful poetry there, life as a corridor that stretches out, and the anguish of not knowing where it ends. The fourth dream, of stopped clocks, requires no complex explanations. Time is the most precious commodity we have. Seeing the clock stop in a dream is a direct warning. Time is running out. For an elderly person, this image is not just a neurological reflection, it is the translation of a constant concern. How many days are left? And more importantly, what to do with them? It is impossible to hear these accounts without reflecting on our own use of time. How many times do we waste hours on things that don't matter, while ignoring what truly gives us meaning? The light in the tunnel, the fifth dream, is almost universal in narratives bordering between life and death. The brain can explain it with electrical impulses, but the soul sees an invitation. It doesn't matter if it's real or symbolic. For those who dreamed it, it was a moment of peace. Perhaps this light is a reminder that, in the end, we all seek clarity. We all want to believe that beyond the darkness, there is something welcoming. And even if science never confirms this, the fact that so many elderly people dream of the same image shows that this hope is an essential part of the human experience. The sixth dream of losing important objects touches us because it represents the quietest fear of old age. Losing memory, losing identity, losing what makes us who we are. The key that disappears, the house that cannot be found, the document that goes missing. All of this reflects the anguish of losing what anchors us. More than a sign of prefrontal cortex failure, this dream is a portrayal of a real fear, that of no longer recognizing oneself. And hearing an elderly person recount this type of dream is to hear, between the lines, their plea for help not to be forgotten. And finally, the seventh dream, that of farewell. Perhaps the most human of all. Because farewell is not just an event, it is a process. It is looking back and realizing that every hug might have been the last. It is feeling that every word spoken might be the final one. For an elderly person to dream of train stations, airports, packed bags is not merely the result of brain connections. It is also the translation of a lifetime of arrivals and departures, now condensed into a final scene. The brain can explain, but life is what gives it meaning. And here we come to the final point of this journey. These 7 dreams should not be seen as curses or inevitable omens, but as signs that the mind continues to speak to us, even in the most critical moments. They are reminders that we cannot ignore the body's signals, but they are also invitations to reflect on what truly matters. Because if even in the midst of neurological collapse, the brain insists on showing us images of time, family, and farewell, perhaps the message is clear. These are the true pillars of existence. Now, allow me to ask you a direct question. What if tonight you had a striking dream, one of those that seemed to carry a warning? Would you pay attention? Or would you simply ignore it? The study that inspired this video shows that listening to the dreams of the elderly can save lives. But listening to their dreams can also save something even more precious: their memory, their history, their legacy. Each account is a window to the invisible, and it is up to us not to let them go unnoticed. Therefore, I want you to keep this reflection. Dreams are not just random images. They are internal voices, echoes of the mind trying to translate what we often cannot express when awake. Especially in old age, they can be both health alerts and revelations about the meaning of life. And if this video touched you in any way, I ask for a simple yet powerful gesture. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's not just to help it grow, but so that together we can continue exploring topics that truly matter, because life, especially after 60, is not about accumulating things but about seeking meaning. And here in each video, I want to offer you not just information, but revelations that can transform the way you see your days. So share this content with someone you love, perhaps a friend, perhaps an elderly relative. Who knows, by hearing about these dreams, that person may also find new ways to understand what they feel, or even new signs to take care of their own health. After all, dreams are doors. And by listening to them carefully, we can not only understand the brain, but also understand the soul.